Welcome to the latest episode of B.Y.O.B Conversations with Berneta and Lornett. I'm Berneta, this is Lornett, and we're going to be talking about Eve and the Faders. Previously, we've talked about a couple of characters in the story. Eve, the title character, we've talked about Agent U, but we haven't talked about another really pivotal character in the story, a character who moves the story along in very interesting ways. That you'll see if you haven't read the book yet. Mauricio Candela. That's who we'll be talking about today.
Mauricio character throughout the story is you get a sense of him, but you really don't, because his kind of motivations and actions are kind of shrouded in mystery throughout the story until the very end. And then you kind of find out, like, who is this guy really?
Yeah, let's look at how Mauricio is actually introduced in the story. So when Eve starts at SPI, she is, meeting one-on-one with the director of that program. And there's a strange man in the room who basically is very quiet. I don't even know if he says more than a word or two when they're introduced. And that's kind of it in terms of Mauricio's introduction. He's just kind of a stoic character.
And that kind of like the story ends with Mauricio versus Eve. Since Eve is the first character we're introduced to, we kind of do a deep dive into kind of her life, her motivations, and we see her character arc. But it kind of ends with Mauricio because he comes in the story, but he's not really featured in the beginning. But as you get towards the middle, in the climax, he's a heavy central part of it and drives the story along. However, there's a part early in the story that you find out that he's been there far longer than you think. So you'll just have to read the book, figure that out, and see how central this character is. And I guess my question to you is kind of, in your first draft, you had this idea of him, and kind of, I know we went back and forth when we were editing and talking about character motivations, and kind of this how we ended up with this version of Mauricio versus kind of the original version where he was a little more motivations, a little clearer, and it wasn't the kind of encounters that him and Eve had.
So the question is, how did I end up with this version of the character?
Yes.
Yeah, so it had a lot to do with the fact that in the first draft, Eve seemed kind of like a character who just was a very alone kind of individual, not really the kind of person who displayed like real human needs and things like this. And so really Mauricio was just there as a fixture, but not really as a person that she bonded with. And after some discussions about the characters, I made the decision to make Mauricio a little bit more multidimensional in a way to help actually build Eve's character. Eve needed more of a reason to do some of the things she was doing throughout the story, and Mauricio helped serve some of that purpose. Ending the story of Mauricio was a very big deal because, the title character is Eve. So you would think the book would end with her. But given Mauricio's integral role into the birth of the SPI, the agency that Eve finds herself entangled in, it makes sense for Mauricio to be featured as sort of the conclusion of the story. That said, it also hopefully foreshadows for readers that there will be a short story coming soon, specifically centered on Mauricio, giving a little bit more detail about what happens with him after the story, after the events of Eve and the Faders.
Yeah, and I think it lays the groundwork for this universe of the Faders and Alphas. So we're looking forward to kind of seeing what the fans' feedback are, seeing what our readers' feedback is, what response we get, and we kind of just hope you enjoy the story and the ride that you're gonna go. And the folks who read the story already know, like, it was a wild ride, and it's only getting started.
And we received feedback early on when we were finishing the novel that Mauricio was a very sort of intriguing character for readers. My aunt in particular was like, I want to know more about Mauricio. What happens with him? And so that was even more motivation to go ahead and write a short story about Mauricio. and really sort of make sure that we fully flesh out who he is, why he makes the decisions he makes. And so readers can actually come to a fuller sort of like sense of who he is. So stay tuned for those short stories, his short story, as well as short stories centering some of the other characters coming soon this year before the second book comes out.
Yeah. So until then, drink up and get your read on.